Some books are meant to be forgotten because every time they're opened, the world loses another piece of its soul. Imagine a place where the forest itself seems to breathe, a place where every tree hides a secret, and beneath the frozen ground, something ancient is waiting to wake up. Winter has swallowed an isolated valley deep in the mountains. Snow covers everything except the charred remains of an old church that burned down decades ago under mysterious circumstances. Locals refuse to go anywhere near it. Some claim they still hear voices drifting through the trees whenever the wind changes direction. Others say the fire never really went out. It simply moved underground. Miles away, Alice drives alone through a blizzard. She isn't running toward home. She's running away from her past. Only weeks earlier, her husband Ethan died in a devastating house fire. Everyone called it an accident. Alice wasn't so sure. She kept hearing whispers every night after his funeral. At first, she thought grief was playing tricks on her mind. Then she started finding strange symbols burned into mirrors, walls, and even her own hands after waking from nightmares. One mysterious letter finally leads her here. The envelope contains only 3 words. It wasn't finished, along with an old brass key. The address belongs to Ethan's abandoned family estate. When Alice finally arrives, she finds the mansion almost buried beneath snow. Waiting inside are Ethan's estranged family. His father, a cold and bitter historian obsessed with ancient myths. His younger brother Daniel, who hasn't spoken since childhood after witnessing something terrible. His grandmother Margaret, who spends her days staring into the fireplace, quietly repeating one sentence over and over. Don't let it burn again. Nobody seems surprised Alice came, almost as if they were expecting her. Dinner is painfully silent. Nobody mentions Ethan. Nobody explains the strange symbols carved into nearly every wooden beam in the house. Then, the lights suddenly go out. A deep thud echoes beneath the floor. 1, 2, 3, almost like someone is knocking from underneath the house. The family freezes. Margaret begins crying. Daniel whispers his very first words in years. They found us. Outside, something moves between the trees. Not walking, crawling, far too quickly. Alice looks through the frosted window. For just a second, she sees a woman standing in the snow, completely motionless, her skin blackened like burned wood, her eyes glowing deep red. Then, she's gone. Later that night, unable to sleep, Alice follows strange whispers into the mansion's forgotten basement. Hidden behind a collapsed stone wall sits a massive iron door covered in chains. The brass key from the mysterious letter fits perfectly. Despite every instinct telling her to run, she unlocks it. Inside rests a scorched wooden chest. Its surface is covered with symbols that seem to move whenever no one is looking directly at them. As Alice slowly opens the lid, she discovers something wrapped in black cloth. A book. Its pages appear stitched together with human skin. Across its cover, burned into the leather, are unfamiliar words that seem impossible to stop reading. The whispers grow louder. The room becomes colder. Candles ignite by themselves. Without realizing it, Alice begins reading aloud. The ancient language twists through the darkness. Outside, every crow in the forest suddenly takes flight. The frozen ground begins to crack. Something buried beneath the old church finally opens its eyes. Far below the earth, a voice laughs. And somewhere deep within the forest, the first Deadite smiles. But what awakens next will make Alice wish the fire had consumed everything years ago. The ancient words leave Alice's lips, and the silence that follows feels even more terrifying than the chanting itself. For a few seconds, nothing happens. Then, the entire basement begins to shake. Dust pours from the ceiling. The candles burn with an unnatural green flame, and the old book slams itself shut. A deep growl echoes through the stone walls, not from outside, but from somewhere beneath the house. Alice grabs the book and rushes upstairs. The moment she reaches the hallway, she notices something strange. The mansion has changed. The wooden walls are now covered in dark vein-like cracks that seem to pulse as if the house itself has a heartbeat. Every family photograph has transformed. Where smiling faces once appeared, there are only empty black eyes. Then comes a scream. It belongs to Daniel. Alice races toward the sound and finds him standing frozen in the dining room, pointing toward the fireplace. The fire has gone completely black. Instead of flames, dark smoke rises upward, twisting into the shape of a human figure. A raspy voice whispers from inside it. "You opened the door." Before anyone can react, the smoke explodes across the room. Windows shatter. Furniture overturns. The lights burst one after another. When the chaos settles, Grandmother Margaret is gone. Only her empty wheelchair remains. The family scatters through the mansion searching for her. Alice and Daniel head toward the second floor, following a trail of soot-covered footprints. The footprints stop outside an old bedroom that has been locked for decades. Daniel hesitates. "This was my grandfather's room," he says quietly. "Father told us never to enter." Alice pushes the door open. Inside, time seems frozen. Books line every wall. Maps of ancient ruins are pinned across a large desk. Strange symbols cover the floor. At the center of the room sits an old reel-to-reel tape recorder. A single tape is already inside. Alice presses play. A crackling voice fills the room. "If anyone is hearing this, then I failed." The voice belongs to Professor Elias Hart, Daniel's grandfather. He explains that decades earlier, he discovered an ancient underground temple hidden beneath the burned church. Inside, he found 3 cursed relics: a dagger forged from black stone, a silver medallion covered in unknown symbols, and a terrible book, bound in human flesh. Believing he could study its secrets, Elias brought the relics home. Instead, he unleashed something far older than humanity itself. He calls it the Burning One. Unlike ordinary Deadites, this ancient entity doesn't simply possess people. It feeds on grief. The more guilt and sorrow a family carries, the stronger it becomes. And once invited inside, it can never truly leave. The recording ends with one final warning: destroy the heart, or the fire will spread forever. Suddenly, the tape begins playing backward on its own. The voice changes. It is no longer Elias speaking. Now it sounds ancient, mocking. Too late. The tape recorder bursts into flames. Alice and Daniel barely escape before the entire room ignites. As they run downstairs, they discover Edgar standing perfectly still in the hallway. His back faces them. He isn't moving. Daniel cautiously calls his father's name. No answer. Alice steps closer. Edgar slowly turns around. Half of his face has become blackened and cracked like burning charcoal. His smile stretches impossibly wide. "You should have stayed away," he growls. Then his neck twists all the way around with a sickening crack. The transformation is complete. The first Deadite has arrived. Edgar attacks with terrifying speed. He hurls Daniel through a glass cabinet before grabbing Alice by the throat. She desperately reaches for the nearest object, a heavy brass candle holder. She slams it into Edgar's head. Once, twice, 3 times. But he doesn't even slow down. Instead, he laughs. A deep, distorted laugh that echoes through the mansion. Just as Edgar prepares to strike again, Susan rushes in with an old hunting shotgun. She fires. The blast throws Edgar across the hallway, tearing away part of his shoulder. For a brief moment, everyone believes he's dead. Then, his severed arm begins crawling across the floor like a giant spider. It grabs the shotgun, fires wildly, and disappears into the darkness. The mansion falls silent once more. Alice finally realizes the horrifying truth. This isn't a haunted house. It's a prison. And whatever she awakened below the mansion has only begun collecting its victims. Outside, the blizzard grows stronger. Every road leading away has vanished beneath snow. Their phones are dead. Their vehicles refuse to start. They are completely isolated. Meanwhile, deep beneath the ruined church, a massive chamber slowly awakens. Ancient chains snap one by one. Molten cracks spread across the stone floor. At the center of the chamber, a colossal shadow opens glowing eyes for the first time in centuries. The Burning One has sensed the Necronomicon, and now it is coming to reclaim what belongs to it. The survivors barricade themselves inside the mansion, hoping the Deadites can't get in. They're wrong. The evil isn't outside anymore. It's already inside every wall, every shadow, and every memory. As Alice searches through Professor Elias's journals, she finally discovers the truth. The Necronomicon was never meant to summon the Deadites. It was created to imprison an ancient demon known as the Burning One. Every time someone reads from the book, the prison weakens. Meanwhile, Edgar fully transforms into a horrifying Deadite and begins hunting his own family. Susan sacrifices herself to save Daniel, but moments later she returns as an even more terrifying creature, forcing Daniel to face his possessed mother. Heartbroken, he defeats her using the ancient black dagger. But what happens next changes everything. The ground beneath the mansion suddenly collapses. Alice and Daniel fall into a hidden underground temple buried beneath the old church. There they discover hundreds of skeletons surrounding a massive stone altar. Hanging above it are 3 giant chains holding back a fiery portal. 1, 2, 3. The final chain snaps. The Burning One finally emerges. Unlike the other Deadites, this creature doesn't attack immediately. Instead, it offers Alice something she desperately wants. It promises to bring Ethan back to life. For one painful moment, Alice almost accepts. But she realizes the demon isn't offering resurrection. It's offering another possession. With no other choice, Alice plunges the ancient titer into the Necronomicon itself. The book erupts in black fire. The temple begins collapsing. The Burning One lets out a deafening scream that shakes the entire mountain. Alice grabs Daniel, and together they race through the collapsing tunnels. Behind them, the Deadites are swallowed by waves of fire and falling stone. Just as they reach the surface, the entire mansion sinks into the earth. Silence returns. For the first time, the forest feels peaceful. Rescue teams arrive hours later. Authorities blame the destruction on earthquake and gas explosion. Nobody believes Alice's story. Weeks later, Daniel begins recovering from everything that happened. Alice decides to leave town forever. Before leaving, she visits Ethan's grave one last time. She places a single flower on the headstone. Then she walks away, finally ready to let go of the past. But Evil Dead stories never end that easily. Far away, workers begin clearing the ruins of the burned church. One construction worker notices something buried beneath the ashes. It's an old leather-bound book, completely untouched by the fire. As he brushes away the dirt, the cover slowly opens by itself. The pages begin turning. A familiar whisper echoes through the empty forest. "Read from me." The worker smiles strangely. His eyes turn completely white. Cut to black.